Donald Trump is doing a good job of keeping the campaign promises, and he's done more to drain the swamp and clean up corruption in D.C. than all the other presidents combined. He's the only one that's taking it seriously, and he's just getting started. He's got 3.5 years to go, but there is no way that he can clean up D.C. without going after the public employee unions. And that doesn't just mean D.C., that's the whole country. It's cities, state, county governments. The unions in these government offices that shouldn't even be there are now the incubators of corruption. The corruption that's destroying government at all levels. Thank you, my friends. I'm glad you came back. Another episode of What They Don't Say. And this is something that really needs to be discussed because it costs the taxpayers a lot of money, for one. If you talk to the taxpayers about their opinion of government jobs, they tell you those people are spoiled. You know, they've got every type of benefit you can think of. They've got, 11 paid vacations. I've known state government employees that only had a couple of years in. They get like 5 weeks of vacation a year. When you add up the 2 weeks of paid vacation, the 11 days of sick days they could cash out or take, then they got flex days off. I mean, it's crazy. You really get spoiled in these government positions, and none of them work hard. All of them tell you they do. They don't. We know it. Call the government office and try to get an answer. It's not just the government offices where the unions are and they shouldn't be. We've got the teachers, we've got police, we've got fire, we've got the maintenance workers, and then all the office and administration. Everyone knows the jokes about the guys out there in the crews working. There's 4 guys sitting around watching one guy do the job. We all know this. This is typical of unions in general, but in the trade unions, those people stay busier and work a little more than these people in these government unions do. And something else is really weird. I've got a lot of experience working with unions, way too much. I spent a lot of years in manufacturing after starting out in construction as a kid in the electrical union. But I'll tell you, the people in all the trade unions and all the factories and everything, they always hate the company. There has to be a villain. Because if there is no villain, you don't need the savior. If you don't hate the company, you don't need the union. If you don't fear the company, if you trust the company, you don't need the union. Well, how come they preach that with all these corporations, but when it comes to the government, they don't tell you to hate those people, do they? No, the government employee unions are totally different. Yes, the villains. That's why it's important for everybody to hear this, because once you hear it explained, you'll start recognizing the signs if it's not something that you've already had to deal with yourself in your own work settings. But what they do, first they identify who the villain is, and they make you hate the villain, which is the company. They make you fear the villain, which is the company. They're going to get rid of you. They're going to hurt you. They're going to screw you. They're going to take away your benefits if we don't protect you. They're the villains. We're the heroes. That's what the union does. The company's the villain. The union is the hero. Now let us get in the middle of this and make money off every one of your damn paychecks. That's what the union does. And people fall for this stuff. Sometimes you do get better pay. Sometimes you do get better benefits. It's not that the unions don't serve any purpose at all, but they do not belong in the public sector because of their political ambitions. There is no way they should be in the public. They should be involved in the public sector. Not at all. That's what they do. They create the villain, and they offer themselves as the hero, the messiah to come save the lowly worker. Now, when you get into public employee unions, all of a sudden, they don't hate the company anymore. You don't hear that from them. You can sit and talk to someone from a factory, say, okay, let's pick one, Massey Ferguson, they're gone now. A Massey Ferguson union employee will tell you how much they hate the company, how they just want to screw them. They want to do this, they want to do that. Thank God the union protected us. The union feeds them that stuff, okay? But in the public employee unions, they don't feed that same level of animosity because it's the Democrat government. They want you to be happy with the people that you've got in government or leading government because that's the Democrats. They don't want you to start getting mad. That's because of the fact that public employee unions are in bed with the party. And that should not be. That is a major reason they should not exist. It gives the party an unfair advantage on the inside, and it gives them a level of control that is not supposed to exist in government positions. There is no reason for government employees to have a public employee union. Public employee unions, they started, a lot of people don't realize this, they had these back in medieval days. They called them guilds then. Like the Screen Actors Guild they got right now. That's what they called them. They called them the guilds. And it wasn't about serving the employees. They were basically controlling the employees. They got to say who worked, what kind of work you did, when you worked, what you worked with, how you did the work. They controlled everything about the work, and they took a cut of the pay. Well, later on, when it came into America, they were serving a different purpose because there was some awful, ugly robber barons, and people were getting abused. You know, they had little kids work. There was all kinds of things going on. And the labor unions came back for that purpose to address that. And they did a good thing because they were needed at the time. Because the employees were getting abused. People were getting hurt. They were having to work anyway, or they get hurt on the job and just get thrown away. Well, that's not the situation that we've got in these public employee unions, okay? We don't have teachers being forced to work 80 hours a week in grueling conditions, okay? And the conditions they complain about now, like with some of these cities where the kids are just totally out of control, talk to your Democrats because the union isn't doing a damn thing for you. The police, they complain because we can't do anything with these criminals. We're in danger out there and we can't get the criminals off the street. Well, talk to your damn Democrats. But no, you won't get mad because the union's not going to support you doing that. The union gets too much power like that. They get a lot of political power because if you go in there and you start resisting their political machinations that they run through the unions, you're out. They'll find a way to fire you, and don't think the union's going to back you up when they do. I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen multiple times. People will say, well, I know that's what the union does. I know the union supports abortion and DEI stuff, and I don't, but I don't support that, even though if the union does. Well, trust me, you're supporting it. You're supporting it with your dues that pays for the activism behind all of that stuff. You're paying for all of the stuff, even if you don't like it. Your dues are paying to assist all of that stuff, to strengthen it, to bleed it into our society. Yeah, you're part of that. So you can't just wash your hands and pretend that you're walking away and you're not part of it. You are. You're not. You might not be a willing part of it, but you're a part of it. Unfortunately, people who are against the unions being and stuff like that don't have the spines to stick up for themselves. So unfortunately, that never changes. But we don't need unions for these people. They are not abused. People wonder why our education system is such a disaster. Try firing a bad teacher. It's almost impossible to do. In New York City, they fire a couple a year because it's almost impossible to fire. They've got what, 70, 80,000 teachers? Any company of that size, a regular commercial company of that size, is going to fire a lot of people in a year because a lot of people don't perform. That doesn't matter if you're in a public employee union. It's not enough to just not perform. You've got to really do something horribly egregious before you get thrown out, especially if you're a person of color or some other DEI affirmative action qualification. Nope, they keep those bad employees. All they do is stack the deck. Trump knows about all of this stuff. Trump was building in construction in New York City during the 80s when the labor, and was his formative years in the industry. One of the things he had to learn, unions were in charge of everything. Guess who's in charge of the union? The mafia. There's still a lot of organized crime stuff going on with these unions. If you don't think so, just look at the Doge stuff. Look at the Doge things that were uncovered. Right through the union offices, wasn't it? Democrat union offices. These are not offices of the people. They are offices of the unions. The unions are funded and tied into all these globalists. That's why you have the Antifa stuff that's going on here, going on in Europe. It's globalist operations, and these unions are tied into them. They have no place. It's an infiltration of our government. But Trump had to work within that union environment, trying to build buildings. In the days of the Mafia Concrete Club, I don't know if you ever heard of that. They also called it the 2% Club. And what they did was they really controlled everything about the concrete industry, and you cannot build without concrete. Everybody knows this. I mean, everything from the sidewalks, a lot of the parking lots, the buildings themselves, foundations, it's all concrete. Over a couple $1,000,000, they would take 2% of everything. They were making millions and millions of dollars. Trump had to pay those crooks, and he knew he was paying them. You think he liked that? Trump also knew what happened if he did something that pissed off the union on his jobs. He had to pay to play. And don't think that didn't burn him every time he did it. Nobody knows about it more than Trump. Nobody knows about the corruption in the construction industry more than Trump and the ties that it had to the unions. And it's not just the mafia, it's the unions themselves. The mafia was a willing accomplice, as were the unions. The garbage haulers. Right now, last I knew, they still had a strike up in Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, I believe it's Pittsburgh, it might be Philadelphia, but they got a strike going on because the garbage guys want more money. So they're holding the whole town hostage. Garbage piled up along the street. You should not be able to do this. If you're a city worker, you owe it to the citizens to be there doing your damn job. Just because the union says, well, you can just quit and let it all pile up, with all the disease, the rats, the mice, all the filth that comes from that, like you don't have enough problems with all the homeless already. Now you're going to put piles of garbage out there that are as tall as their tents. Now, they shouldn't be able to do this. Call a government office and just try to get any kind of help. And you find out how hard those people do not work, if you can actually get a live human on a phone. But these public employee unions are the incubators of corruption in the government. They're not supposed to be working directly through a party, but they do. And how they do this is the union will pass out information. Like, say the Democrats are having I'll use the example of the steak fry in Iowa. They got a big steak fry. All of the unions promote this through work, right? They promote it through the union halls. Go out there and meet all the Democrat senators. They don't tell you Democrats. They just tell you, meet this senator, that senator, this city council person. It's all Democrats. Okay, they encourage that through the union. The support and the voting, that's all supported through the union. They can't go in to a city office and hang it up by the time clock. They're not supposed to, but they probably do. But they do that in the factories and the other union establishments. They promote all this stuff. It's all Democratic activism. They recruit Democratic activists from government offices. Now, how far do you think you're going to get in fairness when someone with an opposing political view comes up for a promotion? Who do you think is going to get it? It's going to be your Democrat. It's going to be the union choice. It always is. These unions do not belong. I don't care if it's the police, the fire, the maintenance workers, the teachers. None of them should be unionized. If you don't like it, then don't get into that industry, because that puts in an unfair level of Democrat bias, and there's a lot of corruption that's tied to it, and it never gets exposed because they are all in on it. God bless Trump if he can get rid of these public employee unions, because he has to, And there is no way he's going to clean up government unless he does. We got to get this right, my friends. If we do, then maybe God will continue to bless this great country of ours. Thanks for listening.